What's poppin', y'all? How y'all doing today? This is Ram with episode 3 of Ram Tutorials, with tutorials based around my followers' questions and inquiries and just wanting to know what to do to improve the art, and I'm here to help them. So, today's episode is going to be based off of a continuation of lines. Originally, the original video was going to be lines and shapes, but lines took a whole nother left turn and became its own 25-minute video. So I'm going to dedicate this episode to shapes specifically, and how those shapes can, work with your lines, and how they can work together in order to improve your composition and give a sense of direction and focus. So, shapes can be used to create movement. They can work with lines to lead direction for your eye across a composition. Shapes can be laid out in the composition similar to how you lay out your values or your light and shadow with major and minor key, which I referenced in the first video. Well, not me, but the other instructor that I watched his tutorials with. And major and minor key is just a reminder of just basically a ratio of what's going to be dominant, what's going to be submissive in your composition. Are you going to have more of one thing versus another? What's going to be more important? What's going to be least important? How much contrast do you want between these two things? For example, we have this painting right here by Edgar Poe. Ooh. See his name right there. Like, for example, with this painting, what you see here is a giant rectangle, essentially. Smaller rectangle, bigger rectangle. You can cut it up into pieces, carve it out, and then this itself is like a rectangle in this area, and there's just a whole stack of rectangles inside this area. Just how the pattern of the rock is. And you'll see a lot of patterns that you can create when looking at nature or doing environmental painting. Like, nature likes to follow patterns. It's some weird phenomenon that we humans try to piece everything together, have some sense of familiarity, or like some peacefulness instead of things looking like chaos. You want to find the rhythm and movement in the environment. And so with here, you can see things being broken up like that, and it all depends of how you want to show the environment to look like in your composition. And so you see there's a whole bunch of rectangles compared to just these little guys, just little tiny little sticks. And of course, just because of the size itself, there's a big contrast between all of this versus just this area, which even then is still a rectangle just laid out horizontally. Moving on with this image, I just googled Disney environmental paintings, and what's cool about Disney is that they move towards more illustration style compared to more realism, but with that difference is that they put more focus on design and shapes and layout, like to give out a much more pleasing image to look at. It's not realistic, but it has the realistic elements that comes from nature, and then they shape it together to how they want to present it. So for example, here, something but triangles. Right here, triangle there. We got triangle here. Bigger triangle. Bigger triangle. Bigger triangle. 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 And then you're gonna have this If you want to just stretch it by any means, a triangle. You got the shadows laid out in triangles. And that's the mountain area. So the focus is, you can see the sense of contrast between this area. Put an arrow versus this area. It's like a sense of dominance with this mountainside and like a lot of open space in the background. Here it's more vertical lines versus triangles or diagonal lines, depending how you want to lay it out, how you want to represent things. This can seem more like a rectangle, and that's your shapes right there. And then you have just the straight lines of clouds back there. Slow organic lines, but it's still horizontal. And even then you can see there's a sense of pattern, some weird way. It's like open space, negative space. You got horizontal lines, you got diagonal lines, and then you got vertical lines right here. And you got this weird shape right there. So it's just all a matter of laying out where everything wants you to go. And you can see the focus in this painting is in this area with the light shining on it. Everything else around it is much dimmer. And there's a lot of sense of space since this is really dark, and you go deeper into it and you go into the light, and then the light just fades off right here, and then it gets bright again over here. What we have here with this painting is a very, I guess, futuristic, or just a very, like, you know, just very lonely painting. I think it takes place in the future, just with the little helmets they got. But what we have here is a little story. Just three lone travelers just wandering across, like, you know, a desert, maybe a distant planet, maybe they're stranded, maybe they're just nomads who just travel like that, probably looking for shelter, you know, the usual spacefaring adventure. And what we got here is some, you know, very strong shapes. You can obviously tell we got a very strong slanted lines, you know, directional lines going ahead across over here. Even the paint strokes in general all just go up in this direction. And then in the opposite direction we have, you know, opposite effect, lines going straight this way. Even the rocks are pointing that way. Even the shadows are going in that direction. So we got, let me just Control Z all of it because I realized I was painting on the wrong layer, but that's besides the point. We make little mistakes, we learn from them. But got a whole bunch of lines going in that direction, 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 yada 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 yada. You get the point. And then we got opposite direction. So there's a sense of balance. Is the tipping point is going out this way. It's going out this way. And those are your, you know, directional lines. But with the shapes specifically, You got very strong triangles, and they can be broken up by the brush strokes if you look closely. You got the painting lines right here. Oh, nope. Going like this. Just connect everything. Break them up. Go into their own thing. Even the triangle right here. Triangle right there. Triangle right there. The bigger triangle just in general. More triangles. You got bigger triangle here. You got the look at the pattern. You got negative space in a triangle. You got the, let me erase this. You got the, you have the negative space here as a triangle. You have positive space here as a triangle. Then you have the negative space again as a triangle, positive space triangle, and then negative space is a triangle. It's a pattern. Bada bing, bada boom, bada ba. And then what we have here on the bottom is a whole bunch of rectangular shapes. You got even triangle there. Rectangular shapes. And you got a little bunch of little triangles here. Circle, rectangle, little triangle, little triangle. You got triangles here. You got triangles here. You got triangles here. You got triangles here. Triangles here. Triangle, triangle, triangle. And it doesn't even sound like I'm saying triangle anymore. But you get the point. Even the shadows do like a point, just pointing in that direction. But you can get the sense of the contrast. Like it's a very sharp painting. It's very jagged. It's very flat, of course, but it's still angled. It's the point of what he wanted to give it. It's a sense of like, whoa, like this is a little dangerous. This is a little crazy. Where we're at, like we gotta be careful. We're lost. Like there's a sense of urgency coming from these shapes. In design, sharp triangles usually represent something dangerous or a sense of menacing feel, or something to be wary of. Like you see knives, sharp triangles, fangs, blunt objects just broken up into sharp pieces of glass. Maybe like just you find the angles in there, and the sharp angles create a sense of danger. So that's what this artist did, and that's what you get from it. But moving on from the examples, we can get into just some general tips and tricks, like 360 no scoping. No, tips and tricks of your shapes. And you realize that shapes move the eye. It's pointing in this direction. You look over here, you got a circle, loop around, move on to a square, just stops. It's blunt. You just move across. Depending on the length, it's long ways. You can look up this way, or if it's this way, you can look down that way. Each shape has an axis, which is the center force of the object. It's the middle. It's what turns it around. You got a square, you got the axis, you turn it a little bit, then you have the front plane, and then the side plane. It's turning on its axis. What's cool about shapes is that with the axis comes with directional force. And if you see the bigger shape here compared to this little one, the directional force is heavier here. It feels like it's, it's dropping this way. But, if you tweak it a little bit, it feels like you can be pulling up this way, or it's just hanging loose this way, depending how you want to see it, depending on what the design is. It's just a simple shape, so there's a lot of variability there. With shapes, there's positive, negative forces with the shape, and what I mean by that is concave and convex. Concave is a positive force, convex is a negative force, and that's how you build rhythm in shapes when you're building specifically organic shapes or just geometric shapes as well. Just depending on how you build it. So if you got this right here, that's a negative shape, but if you got this there, basically it's positive, concave, convex, and you still have the directional force. So it's a sense of rhythm there, flowing smooth like water. It's pleasing to the eye. And what you want to do with these shapes in the composition is, you want to build variety in your shapes. You want to have the contrast. So going back to the triangles, I'm going to build another one. We're going to have these big old guys be there. And, the majority of the painting is just sharp triangles and just strong directional force going this way, or it's going down this way. But the exception is these guys. Actually, better yet, I just know something. Whoop. Directional lines. So they're pointing up this way. Got the connecting line points right there. 3 dots. All in one go. Same way right there. It all ties together. But besides that, you got the shapes. You got 3 straight vertical lines versus all of just this, what would be, technically chaos, is just strong angled directional forces and shapes versus these small little rectangles, like a 3G bar. And that's the variety you want to make, because when you look at this painting, you see these little guys first, and then you swoop up and follow along this whole big old rock, and you get the flow of like, okay, this is a sense of giant pending, nature, bigger than man itself. And that's what you want to do when you're thinking about these things and setting up your composition. The exception to what you see in the pattern, or what you're building out, the pattern of the strong angled lines, the exception is the vertical lines, and that's your focal point. That's when you want to bring attention to it. That's another way of doing that.